In my hand, I have the blueprints for a Viking Age iron smelter. What's an iron smelter? That's what we're gonna build today. Now we've been to the Bronze Age and we've made a few swords, but there's a big difference between bronze casting and smelting iron. Now this is a furnace I use for melting metal, and a common misconception is that this is a smelter. They're very different. The furnace melts metal. Smelting is a heat-induced chemical reaction. It's different, but we'll get into that as we go. First, let's build the thing. First thing I need to do is pick a spot. Pick right here. So I just dug my slag bowl. That's here in the plans. And a lot of other plans show like a pedestal where the iron bloom will sit when it's done. And that's kind of shown here. So I'm gonna try to make that. I've never done this before, so we're figuring this out. Now this isn't a tutorial, it's just I'm giving this a try and hopefully it works. I don't know if that's right, but we'll go with it. How am I supposed to get back in the house without making my wife mad? I don't know much about making clay structures, but I know they add straw to it to make it stronger. And if you know the Moses story, they added straw to make their bricks.
And to feed the brick pits, straw, carried on the bowed backs of women.
So I'm gonna make some straw and add that to my clay to make it stronger. It's one way to clean your hands. So I'm gonna go ahead and make coiled bricks like this and build up my whole stack. I'm gonna need a lot more clay, so let's go harvest some. Now for clay, I'm just gonna be using this Lake Superior red clay. This was all deposited during the Ice Age, when Lake Superior was hundreds of feet higher than it is now. This was the bottom of Glacial Lake Duluth. I don't know if this clay is gonna work, but it's the clay I'm gonna use. Now the clay is pretty pure, but every now and then you get like a rock or cobble, sometimes even a big boulder that's in there. And those came back when there were actually icebergs in the glacial lake. So as those icebergs were floating around, they would carry stones like this, and as those icebergs would melt, they would drop into the lake bed, and we call those glacial drop stones. So every now and then you find something like that, but for the most part, it's pretty pure clay. I'm not gonna do any refining of the clay, I'm just gonna use it as is, and hopefully that'll work. Now for iron ore, I've been doing a lot of gold panning, and I've been saving the black sand. But for the rest, I'm just gonna take a magnet and drag that through the sand of Lake Superior. And you can see it's full of magnetite. That's gonna be my iron ore. Ow! Now I've got several different plans here, and they're all a little bit different, but all of them include a pipe of some kind. This is a stainless steel pipe I got, and this is gonna be my twire. Twire.
Tire.
I think it's pronounced tweer, and it's supposed to be set between 20 and 25 degrees. So I'm gonna use this and kind of eyeball it. In all the plans I found, none of them have a top view. So I don't know if the pipe is supposed to be directly in or off to the side where it creates more of a vortex. Now in a melting furnace, I put it off to the side because you want that vortex. So that's what I'm gonna do here. Now one of the reasons I wanna do this is because I've never seen anywhere where people explain how to go from iron ore to cast iron. I've seen people take the iron ore and hammer it into steel, but I've never seen them go from ore to cast iron. And I want to know what happens. So my effort is not to just make steel. My effort is to make cast iron from scratch. So I'm looking at the plans and it says that the tweer should be about 15 centimeters up. So I kind of think my tweer might be too low. It shows it blowing at the top of the bloom, but what I have is I have my tweer kind of at the bottom of the bowl. So if this is running, it's going to be blowing at the bottom of the bloom instead of the top. So I think I actually need to raise my tweer. Dang it, should have paid closer attention. Alright, that's a little bit better height. Maybe. Perfect. So that's a lot higher up, and it should be blowing on top of the bloom around here instead of up underneath the bloom. How can you make bricks without straw?
How can you make bricks without straw?
I wonder how they really do this. Must have a tool to do this instead of by hand. There we go. Hopefully that holds together. Now the next thing I need is iron ore and charcoal. A whole lot of charcoal. Now to make charcoal, all I need to do is heat up wood while at the same time deprive it of oxygen so it doesn't actually ignite and burn up. So this barrel is going to be my deprivation chamber. I'm going to fill it full of pieces of wood and then stack a whole bunch of brush around it, heat it up, but inside the barrel should be deprived of oxygen enough that it turns to charcoal instead of burning up. That's the plan. Ouch! So this poplar is kind of old and punky. I'm thinking it might not be the best thing for charcoal. So I'll use some of it, but I'm thinking I kind of want to get some good hardwood. So anyway, I got some maple, and this should work pretty good for the charcoal. Being that I've never made charcoal before, I'm not sure how big a piece I can use. I know they gotta be pretty small to turn out. I think that should be about right, based on what I've seen other people do. Alright, my barrel's full. Now I don't have a lid for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it upside down. So this is on the ground and that ground is going to be my lid. And that should keep the oxygen away from it enough. There are a few holes in it so it can breathe, but I don't think enough to ignite. That's the hope. I'm going to stack a whole bunch of brush and wood around it and light it on fire. It's not enough wood, I got plenty more cut up, so we'll adjust as we burn it. So got a good rain last night, so everything's wet, so nothing should start on fire other than the pile. So I'm gonna light it. Don't try this at home.
Yeah! Look what I have created! I have made fire!
So I think the charcoal's charcoalifying now. Just leave it there and see what we get. That burned down really quick. I'm just gonna leave it till it's all cool and then flip it over. All right, this has been sitting overnight and it's still warm. This is gonna be a mess, isn't it? Oh. I don't think charcoal is enough. So as far as I know, when you get a good piece of charcoal, it should break through all the way like that and be charcoalified. But you can see it's still wood colored in there. So this is only partially charcoal. See, like this, it's super light and it just breaks apart. That's good charcoal. This you can see is still wood on one side. So being that there's a mix of good charcoal and not charcoal in there, I'm just gonna sort through it and see how much we ended up with. You can see how good of a fuel source it is. There were just a few embers in there, the wind caught to it, and then it just lights right back up. But as far as good actual charcoal, I didn't end up with much at all. I just didn't have enough heat long enough to it, or the pieces were too big. Live and learn though. I really don't want to do that again, so I might just go buy a couple bags of charcoal. I'll take the easy way out. Look, that's all I got. So I've got our charcoal and about 30 pounds of black sand, all from Lake Superior and from gold panning. Now some of the charcoal pieces are a little bit bigger than they probably should be, so I'm gonna make sure I break those down in about 1-inch chunks. It's what I've heard is a good size. I think most of this is actually all pretty good size. So this charcoal is a little bit higher quality than the stuff I made. Royal Oaks is not a sponsor of this video, but they could be. Now the smelter is dry and it's suffered some pretty severe cracks.
Richard, do I have a mark on my face?
But I think all I needed to do is hold together.
Nope, nothing.
Probably should have added more grass and stuff. Now to get the coals hot enough for the smelt, I need a source of forced air. Now some people will build hand bellows, and that's all cool, but I got a bouncy house blower. A little bit more power. Gotta figure out how to set that up though. I hope that's not overkill. So that's getting ripping hot. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start adding the charcoal till that's super hot, and then take my iron ore and sprinkle equal amounts of charcoal and iron ore by weight. Now there is some silica sand in here, and I believe that's okay because they use that as a flux or a slag, and that'll help kind of pull away some of the impurities. I've heard they also use crushed limestone. But since it came from mostly the beach, there's silica sand in there right now, so I think that's all right.
supposed to do that?
It's fine. It's fine.
Big cracks and there's holes all the way inside. It's falling apart. I'm just hoping I can get through this before the whole thing collapses. It's white hot in there, so I'm hoping it's hot enough for the chemical reaction to occur. I almost feel like there's too much wind. This might have been a disaster. I know it got hot enough, but I feel like there was so much air going in there that it was too turbulent to really set the bloom. So I might have just blown everything into a mess. So now I gotta destroy the thing and look to see if there's any kind of metal bloom in there. It's sticky. You can see it's melting like lava right there. But I don't see an iron bloom. Ugh, just crumbles. I have just created a very labor-intensive and time-consuming glass. It's not what I wanted. The chemical reaction did not seem to occur. Iron did not separate from the iron oxide. It just all melted and formed this black glass. Maybe the iron sand wasn't pure enough. Maybe I just had too much other silicates in there. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some research and try to figure this out. You know, there's a lot of channels out there that'll kind of vaguely show you the steps and then show you the finished project all nice and pretty. But there aren't a lot of channels that show you how not to do things. That's what I'm for. Check out this stainless steel pipe. It melted the whole end of it off. I know it was hot enough. And it's encased in black glass. Guess we just gotta try again.
Well, let's get it right.
Okay, set it up again, Frank.
Okay, we're back at the beach and I found some minions. Got Gage and Eli here. And they're gonna be doing the work for me. Got a nice layer of black sand. And they got magnets. They're gonna be doing the refining now. All right, get to work. This is way better. You guys are doing great. Keep it up. Eventually they realized this was an unpaid job. What happened to the good old days? Well, the terms of the strike are still being negotiated, so I have no more unpaid employees. I cleaned up my mess and I'm gonna rebuild everything from scratch. Alright, so here's my new model. I've modified it a little bit To save on materials, because I only have so much clay, I made it a little bit narrower. If that causes problems, we'll find out what they are as we go. The tweer I put right in the center, blowing directly in instead of on the side. And I tried to mix the straw and the clay a little bit better, so hopefully it doesn't crack as much as the last one. And to save material, I added this little piece of pipe that I had to give it a little bit more height, a little bit more draft, without using as much clay. Now we'll let that dry for a few days and do this all over again. This time I'm going to try to get a much more pure concentrate. When I use the magnet, silica sand comes up with the iron ore. But if I do it in a series multiple times, I'm able to refine it. Every time I pick up some of the magnetite, a little more silica sand is left behind. You can see how much was left behind the first time. Now there's still a lot of black sand in there, and then even in the third one, there's still a lot left behind. But after refining it 3 times, I'm getting this pretty pure magnetite. So I'm hoping that'll help with that impurity issue. I think the reason it was so glassy the first run is because we had too much sand in there. So I'm hoping with less silica sand, there's a lot less glass in the final product and a lot more iron. So when I was clearing away the mess, I found this little piece and I hit it with a hammer and it didn't break like glass. I hit it again and it's pretty hard. I think we might have got at least a little bit of iron. Look at that. It was a success. We did get a little piece of iron. Not the best yields, but at least I know I'm kind of on the right track. So hopefully this next smelt gives me a lot more than this. So I had a fire going in this for like a full day yesterday. And it did crack pretty severely, but it's still intact. There's a fire going in it right now, getting it preheated. I'm going to start that going, and this time I'm going to keep the blower a lot farther away so it's not churning up any of the material. And I've got 10 pounds of pretty pure magnetite ore. Now this is way purer than I used last time, and from what I've read for magnetite sand, I can expect maybe a 30-some% yield. So I'm hoping I get at least 3 pounds of iron out of this. Pretty small smelt, but we're still in the experimental phase. Let's try this again. Now this smelt is a lot more gentle. I've got that blower set a long ways away so it's not blowing as directly into it, but still getting a good amount of air going into that tweer, forget the name of it, the tweer, and it's red hot, it's white hot. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. As of now, I think it's going pretty good. I just put the last of the iron in there, so now I'm just going to let it burn all the way down. Hopefully we're left with pure iron. Okay, so that's burned down. Now I got to figure out how to get the bloom out, if there's a bloom in there. I think the only real way to do that is to destroy the thing I've made. Unless I can dig it out, I'm going to try that. Nope. Wood. That's hot. I don't know if any has iron or glass. Boy, it's crumbly. Is it glass or is it iron? I don't know. Now here's one of the harder pieces there. I don't know if it's glass or if it's iron. Some of it seems brittle, almost seems like it's a mix. But one way to tell is hit it with the grinder, and if it sparks, there's iron in it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to see. It's all glass. I'm gonna have to wait till daylight and see if I can find any nodules of pure iron. No wonder cavemen didn't figure this out. It's not easy. The fact that anyone did figure it out is kind of impressive. Alright, now that it's daylight, I'm gonna see if there's anything metallic left behind here. I'm not really sure what the iron is supposed to look like. I think there's probably a real skill to getting the bloom to condense and get together without shattering. This doesn't look like metal to me, but I'm gonna do a spark test and see. So that is iron. That's what it looks like. It's just an unconsolidated mess, but it is metallic iron. Now the question I have that nobody's given me an answer to is why you can't just take something like this and melt it and form it into an ingot and then hammer that out. What I typically see people do is they'll take the iron bloom, they hammer that into something solid, and I guess the process helps refine it and purify it and remove some of the carbon that's in there to make it less brittle and turn it into like a high quality steel. But why not just melt this into a solid ingot and then hammer it? I don't know. That's what I'm going to try to do. So with a magnet, I just went and gathered all the chunky granular pieces that were iron rich enough to be magnetic. This looks to be my best piece, and I want to know, can I weld it? You can weld it. Very cool. But hopefully that means I can melt it. Now the trick is getting a crucible hot enough to melt it. Alright, so I set this aside and thought about it for a while, and I'm going to try to melt it. But it's all honeycomb texture, like it's not a consolidated mass of metal. It's very spongy, which means there's a lot of surface area around there. And I'm worried that when I bring it to that high temperature to try to melt it, it's just going to oxidize away. What I'm going to try to do is submerge it in borax or mix it with borax. So as it's melting, the borax will coat it and act as a barrier so oxygen can't get to it. The borax will kind of become a puddle. Then when I pour it out in the ingot mold, all the iron should go to the bottom, the glassy melt here of the borax should float to the top, and I should be able to break it apart in the end. It'll be the first time I've tried it though. This might just be all my molten borax. And all this is probably still my iron. It's a volcano. Well, I was hoping for a much better result. If you look at what we put in the ingot tray, it's all glass. That's nothing but the molten borax. I don't think any of our metal melted. When I poured out that big molten glob there, I hammered it into that heart tray, and it kind of looks like a metallic heart, so I'm going to cut that in half and see what it looks like cross-section. This is our iron, but man, it's a dirty piece of iron. Aww. My heart's broken. So the heart was nothing but borax too. Now the mass that I was hammering, it is iron. It's an incredibly dirty iron, but it is iron. Now if I had a proper blacksmith setup, I could probably hammer that into a square bar and maybe make something out of it. I'm not really set up for blacksmithing. I melt metal. So I'm gonna call this a successful failure. We did take sand and smelt it all the way down to iron, but it's not really usable yet. But I think it could be. This is amazing to me. It is not intuitive that sand would have anything valuable in it, and to go through all the work of building the smelter, getting the charcoal, heating it up to the insane temperatures it has to be, hammering it out, doing all this. Why would anybody figure that out? It's impressive that iron as a metal even exists, because it is not intuitive, but it is very cool. I got a lot to learn about this endeavor. Please leave your comments. I'm sure you guys will teach me something. Go easy on me too. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.